The sound the envelope made when it slid across the oak table was almost nothing, but the silence after it told me my marriage was over. A week before that, I had been on my mother-in-law's kitchen floor, one hand over my swollen belly, staring up at the woman who had slapped me hard enough to drop me. My name is Raina. I was 31 then, a labor and delivery nurse, married to Griffin, a man who looked solid from the outside and hollowed out the second his mother pushed him. We had been together for 5 years, married for 3, and I had spent too much of that time mistaking tolerance for love. The invitation came that Sunday morning. Family blessing lunch before the baby arrives. Colette's words, bright and fake. By then I was 8 months pregnant, exhausted, and moving like my bones belonged to someone older. Griffin helped me into the car and told me his mother wanted to make peace before the birth. I believed him because I wanted to. The first thing I saw when we walked into her house was one of my ultrasound pictures in a silver frame at the center of the dining table. White plates, linen napkins, candles in the middle of the afternoon. Everything looked soft and thoughtful, which should have warned me. Colette never put that much care into anything that did not benefit her. Piper was in the kitchen with a wine glass. Archer sat at the head of the table with his newspaper. Lennox leaned against the counter, looking like he already regretted being there. Colette kissed the air beside my cheek and said, "You're late." "We're early," Griffin said. She smiled at me. Pregnant women lose track of time. I let it pass, the way I always had. I had let pass the comments about my salary, the comments about my apartment when Griffin and I were dating, the way she once told people at Thanksgiving that girls like me always seemed grateful for leftovers. I used to think staying calm made me stronger. Really, it just made her braver. Lunch started with strange little questions. Colette asked whether I was still seeing my specialist downtown. "My obstetrician is downtown," I said. "And he is a man, right?" Piper asked whether Griffin was ever bothered by how often I was out. Archer asked whether all the baby gifts had come from friends we know. None of it sounded normal. It sounded arranged. I reached for Griffin's knee under the table. "What is this?" "Nothing," he said without looking at me. That was when my heartbeat changed. Colette stood and tapped her glass with a spoon. "Before dessert," she said, "I think we should clear the air." The room went still. Archer folded his paper. Piper set down her glass. Griffin stared at the table like he already knew the script. Colette turned to me wearing that church smile she used when she wanted cruelty to sound righteous. "Raina, we welcomed you into this family. We defended you when people had concerns. Your grief, your moods, your instability after your loss. But now there is something bigger." I felt heat climb my throat. "What are you talking about?" She lifted her phone and showed me a blurry photo through a restaurant window. It was me in a booth, leaning forward, holding a man's hand across the table. "You were seen at Harbor House last month," she said, "crying with a man, looking very close." I stared once, then recognized it. "That's my cousin Dashiell. He flew in after my aunt's biopsy. We were talking about her surgery." Piper let out a short laugh. "How convenient. He was at Thanksgiving," I snapped. "He brought your daughter a giant stuffed fox." Colette's mouth tightened. Interesting how nobody knew about this private lunch. It was not private. I told Griffin I was meeting family. All eyes shifted to my husband. He finally looked at me. "You said cousin. You did not say you were in a booth holding hands and crying." For a second I thought he was joking. "That is your concern? That I comforted a relative?" "My concern," he said, "is that things have not added up for months. The appointments were because my blood pressure was high. You were at one of them." I closed my laptop because I was ordering your birthday watch. His hand twitched toward the watch on his wrist. That should have embarrassed him. Instead, he looked angry that I had facts ready. Colette stepped closer. "Stop twisting this. The truth is simple. This child came awfully fast after your reduced schedule in spring. I was put on reduced shifts because I was fainting." Piper crossed her arms. "And yet you had plenty of time to sneak around." "At home," I said, mostly throwing up. I pushed my chair back and stood slowly. "Enough. Either somebody explains what this ambush is, or Griffin and I are leaving." I had barely straightened when Colette moved. I do not remember seeing her arm lift. I remember only the crack across my face, the chair sliding, and then the hard tile smashing into my hip and shoulder. My breath disappeared. The baby jerked hard inside me, and pure fear took over. I curled around my stomach before I even thought. Someone gasped. Nobody helped me. I looked up from the floor, cheek burning, palm pressed over my belly. Colette stood over me, chest heaving. "You lying little tramp," she hissed. "You thought you could drag another man's baby into this family." I looked at Griffin. He was standing, but he was not moving toward me, not reaching for me, not even asking if I was all right. My voice came out thin. "Pick me up." His face had gone cold. "Tell me the truth." I could not process it. "The truth is your mother just hit me. Tell me if that baby is mine." That question hurt more than the slap. I sat there on the tile and understood all at once that this had been planned. He had not brought me for peace. He had brought me to be judged in front of his family and abandoned if the verdict pleased them. "How dare you?" I whispered. Archer finally spoke without even standing. "Son, get control of this before before the child arrives and things become complicated. Piper crouched close enough for me to smell her perfume. If you admit it now, maybe this can stay private. I looked straight into her face and saw it. This was not about morality. This was about position. My daughter would have been the first grandchild, the first little person in that house who could outrank her. Suddenly, every small insult made sense. A sharp cramp tightened low in my belly and released. Lennox stepped forward. This is too much. Colette snapped. Stay out of family matters. She is 8 months pregnant, he said, and she should have thought of that before humiliating my son. I used the chair to stand. My hips screamed, but I stayed upright. No one touched me, not even Griffin. Move, I said. Colette laughed. You do not get to run and play victim. I looked at Griffin one last stupid time, waiting for the man I married to appear. Instead, he held out his hand. Give me your house key. For a second, I thought I had heard wrong. What? If you are going back there, get your things and leave the key. Actually, no. Give it to me now. The humiliation of that almost dropped me again. That is my home too. Not until I know what I am raising. Colette slid an arm around Piper with a satisfied smile. There. We are finally handling this like adults. Something inside me went very quiet then. Not broken, quiet. I took my keys from my purse, slipped off the house key, and placed it in Griffin's hand. Calmly. Too calmly. Piper's expression flickered. Fine, I said. You want space? You can have it. He looked relieved. That was his mistake. I drove straight to labor triage because the baby had not stopped moving strangely, and every cramp felt like a threat. A resident checked me, monitored the contractions, and told me they were stress-induced but not active labor. My daughter's heartbeat stayed strong on the screen, fast and steady, and I watched that line like it was the only honest thing left in my life. When my mother arrived and saw the bruise forming on my face, rage turned her almost white. Who did this? Please do not go there tonight, I said. She sat beside my bed until late evening, muttering prayers under her breath. The hospital room smelled like antiseptic and rain. Inside, I kept replaying Griffin's voice. Tell me if that baby is mine. Not are you hurt? Not is our daughter okay? That was when the last of my love for him stopped making excuses. I checked my phone after midnight. Colette had left a voicemail saying my disappearance proved guilt. Piper texted that decent women do not hide. Archer wrote one line, let us resolve this quietly. And Griffin sent, if there is proof, bring it. I stared at that message while my mother slept in the chair, and the monitor hummed softly in the dark. Then I remembered the sealed file waiting in the private folder of my desk. Months earlier, after too many suspicious little jokes from Griffin and too many strange questions from Colette, I had asked my doctor about prenatal paternity testing. I had not told anyone, not because I doubted myself, because some buried part of me had already understood what kind of family I was living among, and I wanted something solid ready before I needed it. The sample had been taken. The lab had processed it. The result had been delivered to my portal. I had never opened it. I did that night, alone in the blue glow of my phone, with my cheek throbbing and my daughter alive and steady inside me. And when the file loaded, I knew the next time I stood in front of that family, it would not be as the woman they had shoved to the floor. It would be as the woman walking in with something none of them would be able to scream over. I did not cry when I read the report. That surprised me more than the result did. The lab confirmation sat there in clean black text, exact and clinical, while the side of my face still held the shape of Colette's hand. Probability of paternity, virtually certain. I read it twice, then a third time, until the words stopped feeling like proof and started feeling like a weapon. The next morning, I called the lab myself and requested a printed certified copy with seal verification. Then I called the patient advocate at my hospital and asked a question I had never imagined asking in my own life. If a pregnant woman is assaulted by a family member, I said, keeping my voice level, what documentation should she preserve if she is considering legal action later? By noon I had a folder, not just the lab report, my triage note, my blood pressure spike, the fetal monitoring strip, photos my mother took of my cheek and shoulder in window light, a copy of the message Griffin had sent demanding proof instead of asking whether his wife and child were safe. I did not fully know yet what I would do with any of it. I only knew I was done arriving empty-handed to rooms full of people who mistook volume for truth. The bruise deepened over the next few days, turning ugly colors under my makeup. I took leave from the hospital because my doctor insisted. My stress level was dangerous. That part spread faster than I expected. Nurses talk. Patients' relatives talk more. By the second day, people at church had heard that there had been an incident at my in-laws' house. By the third day, one of Griffin's cousins sent me a careful message that began with, I do not believe what they are saying, but I wanted to check on you. What they are saying? That was how family scandals travel. Never as facts, always as weather. I ignored most of it. I stayed in my mother's guest room, slept with a pillow between my knees, and started noticing how quiet life felt when nobody was judging the way. I buttered toast or folded towels. My mother made soup and tried not to hover. My brother Wilder drove over one evening with groceries and stopped in the doorway when he saw my face. Tell me who, he said. No, Raina. Not because they do not deserve it, I said. Because I need them confident. He hated that answer, which told me it was the right one. Colette called every day. Sometimes from her number, sometimes blocked. Her voicemail shifted in tone, the way liars do when they realize a story is not landing. First she was righteous, then offended, then almost maternal. You know Griffin is suffering too. I raised him better than this, but he is under terrible pressure. You disappearing makes innocent people look guilty. On the fourth day, Piper sent a paragraph paragraph about forgiveness and family unity, which would have been laughable if it had not been so calculated. Tucked in the middle was the line she thought would bait me. We all know stress can make pregnant women emotional and irrational. I smiled when I read that, because right there, under all the varnish, she had told me exactly what they were already preparing. If proof appeared, they would not deny the science. They would deny my stability. They would say I overreacted, misremembered, provoked, exaggerated, so I stopped thinking only about the baby. I started thinking about the room. On the 5th day, I went to the courthouse website and searched incident reporting requirements. I called a domestic violence legal clinic and asked what mattered most. When family violence happens behind closed doors, but with witnesses present, the woman on the line had the kind of calm voice that makes you sit straighter. Truth matters, she said, but structure matters too. Dates, documents, witnesses, contemporaneous records. If people lied together once, they will try to lie together again. That sentence stayed with me. Lie together again. I made another list. There was the old neighbor across from Colette's dining room windows who loved gardening with her blinds open. There was Lennox, who had looked horrified when Colette hit me. There was the fact that Colette's house had a security system with a camera over the side entrance and audio alerts inside the kitchen hallway. Griffin used to brag about it because he installed the app on everyone's phones himself. I called Lennox that evening. He answered on the second ring and sounded tired before I said a word. I wondered when you would. Did you know? No, he said quickly. I knew Mom was angry. I did not know she was planning a trial. I believed him. Not because he was innocent, because he sounded ashamed. Did the cameras catch anything? A pause. Yes, my hand tightened around the phone. Do they still have it? There is rolling storage, he said, unless somebody deleted it. Can you check? Another pause, longer this time. I could hear him thinking through loyalties and consequences and the cost of choosing a side. Finally, he exhaled. I will try. When I hung up, my heart was pounding so hard I had to sit. That was the first micro shift. Not revenge, not yet. Just the first crack in their little wall of certainty. The second came the next morning, and it came from work. I got a call from my unit supervisor, a woman named Dahlia, who had been a nurse longer than I had been alive, and who had zero patience for male cowardice disguised as confusion. I need to ask something delicate, she said. Is your husband contacting the hospital? Cold moved through me. What? He came by yesterday asking whether anyone had concerns about paternity timelines in obstetric cases. She paused. He tried to phrase it like a general question. He is not subtle. Humiliation burned through me so fast it almost made me dizzy. He did what? He spoke to the front desk first, then attempted to talk to one of the residents. Security turned him away from patient areas. For a second, I could not breathe from sheer disbelief. It was not enough that he had let his mother accuse me in private. Now he had brought his suspicion into my professional world, into the place where people trusted me with their blood and fear and newborns. Did anyone entertain it? No, and I documented the visit. Her voice sharpened. Raina, I need to know whether you are safe. That was when my shame turned into something cleaner. Anger, yes, but also clarity. Griffin had crossed into the fourth front without even realizing it. Home, family, practical access, reputation. He had touched them all. I am safe, I said, and thank you. After I hung up, I sat in my mother's kitchen with a mug of tea going cold in my hand and understood what my ending needed. Not a screaming match, not a private apology, a complete reversal in the exact place they thought they were strongest. Sunday came with rain. Colette's blessing lunch had been on a Sunday. Their family dinner would be on a Sunday too. Routine is the religion of controlling people. They return to the same table because it makes them feel untouchable. At noon, Griffin texted, "Are you coming or not?" No hello, no remorse, just that. I wrote back, "I will come by this evening." He answered almost immediately. Good, let us handle it like adults. I looked at those words and laughed out loud. My mother wanted to come with me. Wilder wanted to sit in the driveway. I refused both. This part I needed to do alone. Not because I was strong, because they had stripped me alone, and I wanted them to feel what it was like when the person they underestimated walked back in carrying the full weight of herself. Before I left, Lennox called. His voice was low. "The camera file still exists." I closed my eyes. "You have it?" I copied what I could before it disappeared from the app. He hesitated. "Raina, you should know something else. Mom told Piper to invite 2 church friends tonight. She wants witnesses for your apology." That almost made me admire her nerve. Even after everything, she still thought the evening would end with my head bowed. "Send me the file," I said. My phone buzzed a minute later. There it was. A video from the side hallway camera angle. Grainy but clear enough. The dining table. My chair. My body falling. Colette advancing. Griffin not moving. I watched it once. Only once. Then I forwarded it to an email folder with the lab result, a triage note, the hospital security documentation, and every message they had sent me. A neat little archive. Their voices, their choices, their timing. By the time I reached Colette's house, the rain had slowed to a mist. Warm light spilled from the windows. I could see silhouettes moving inside, comfortable and sure. I sat in the car for a moment with my daughter pressing one heel against my ribs, and I put my hand there gently. "This is the last time," I whispered. Inside, the smell of rosemary and roasted meat hit me first, then the sight of extra guests. 2 women from church. Archer at the head of the table. Piper dressed like she was attending an engagement dinner. Griffin near the mantel, tense and pale. And Colette. She smiled when she saw me. Not kindly, victorious. "Thank goodness," she said loudly. "I told everyone you would do the decent thing." No one offered me a seat. That was perfect. I walked to the middle of the dining room and set my folder on the tablecloth. Every eye followed my hand. Colette folded her arms. Well, she said. I looked at Griffin first. You wanted proof. Then I looked at the rest of them. You wanted witnesses. I took out the certified lab report and placed it in front of Archer. His brows pulled together as he read. Piper leaned in. Griffin moved fast, snatching the page before either of them finished. His eyes ran over the seal, the signature block, the conclusion. Color drained from his face. For one suspended second, no one spoke. Then Colette reached for the page. Let me see that. He handed it to her with a shaking hand. Her mouth tightened as she read, and I watched the exact moment denial failed to arrive quickly enough. That does not prove anything except paperwork can be bought, she said. I expected that. I was ready for it. So I placed my phone flat on the table, tapped the screen, and let the video begin to play. At first there was only the room, then Colette's arm, the strike, my fall, her body looming over mine, Griffin standing still while his pregnant wife hit the floor. No one moved while it played. One of the church women made a broken little sound in her throat. Piper went white. Archer stood up so abruptly, his chair scraped hard against the wood. Where did you get that? From your own house, I said, along with the report, along with the hospital notes from the stress contractions after your wife assaulted me, along with documentation that Griffin brought his suspicion to my workplace. Griffin looked like I had hit him in the chest. Raina, I did not mean. I raised a hand and he stopped, not because he respected me, because for the first time the room did. Colette found her voice first. You sneaky little. No, I said, and my voice came out quiet enough to cut. You do not get to shout over evidence, not tonight. The silence after that felt almost holy. I turned to the two church women. I am sorry you were invited here under false pretenses. I was told this evening was meant to witness my apology. Instead, you have witnessed why there will never be one. Colette lunged for the phone. Archer caught her wrist. That image alone was worth the drive. He stared at her like he had never actually seen the woman he married. Did you hit her knowing she was carrying my grandchild? She humiliated our son. No, he said, we humiliated him. Griffin started crying then. Real tears, messy and helpless and much too late. He took one step toward me. I was scared, he said. I thought if there was even a chance. You thought what your mother told you was more believable than the woman sleeping beside you every night? I made a mistake. I looked at him for a long moment, at the man who had once rubbed lotion on my swollen feet and whispered baby names into the dark, and I felt something colder than hate settle into place. You made a choice, I said. Then I took one more paper from the folder and set it in front of him. He blinked at it. What is this? An appointment confirmation. I met with a family law attorney on Friday morning. His breathing changed. Piper whispered, no. I looked at her. Yes. I gathered my folder, picked up my phone, and adjusted the strap of my bag on my shoulder. Calm compliance. Right person truth. Social shift. Access cut. Every one of their favorite weapons. Returned in a language they could finally understand. Griffin followed me to the front porch. Rain dampening his hair before he even reached the steps. Please, he said. Therapy, separation, whatever you want. I will leave that house. I will cut them off. Just do not do this. I turned back slowly. Do what? End us. I let him sit inside the full meaning of that word. Us ended when your mother hit me, I said. Tonight was just the paperwork catching up. He covered his face. I had dreamed once of seeing him broken with remorse, but real life is stranger than revenge fantasies. When the moment finally came, it did not make me feel bigger. It made me feel free. I walked to my car, opened the door, then paused and looked back one last time. The small final twist came out softer than everything before it. The house key you took from me, I said, opened the rental. The title to the condo is in my name alone. It always was. His head jerked up. I almost smiled. My mother insisted on that before the wedding, I said. For once, somebody in my life knew exactly what kind of family I was marrying into. Then I got into the car and drove away, while he stood in the rain with nothing in his hands. By morning, the fallout had already started. One church woman had called the pastor. Archer had left me a voicemail saying he would pay for the medical bills Colette caused. Whether I answered him or not, Piper deactivated her social media after a cousin posted about false accusations destroying families. Colette called twice, furious and breathless, then stopped when my attorney sent formal notice. Griffin emailed me a letter that was 4 pages long and somehow still said nothing worth keeping. A month later, I gave birth to a healthy baby girl with my mother holding one hand and Wilder holding the other. When the nurse laid my daughter on my chest, warm and furious and perfect, the first thing I felt was not sadness for what she would miss. It was gratitude for what she never would have to survive. I named her Sela, a pause, a breath, a place where the music changes. And when people later asked me when I knew my marriage was truly finished, I never said it was the slap, or the accusation, or even the video on the table. It was the moment he asked for proof, and I realized I no longer wanted to be believed by a man who needed evidence to treat me like a human being.